All right. What does Bon Jovi, Nantucket, and Firehouse have to do with a pastor from North Carolina? But more importantly, what does it have to do with you? Hi, my name's David, and I want to tell you a little story. Let me tell you about a couple of people leading into this, though, that have recently come to mind. One's a dear friend, Richard Warren. I've known him, wow, I've known Rich like 40 years, and I've worked with him. He's played with a lot of people. I've played with a lot of people. And he's a believer. See, a lot of people assume everybody playing in these bands is just a, baby killing pagan, and sadly some of them are. But some of them are believers. Some of them are being lights in very dark places. And I would say Rich is one of those. I'll tell you another one. Perry Richardson, who he's played with, a lot of people. Chronologically, I guess, Max Warrior, Firehouse, Nantucket. Wait a minute, reverse those two. Max Warrior, Nantucket, Firehouse. And seems like and he's with Striper now. And I've been talking with John Mark of Zion Guitars, which is Mariah Guitars now. Ken Hoover, who was another dear friend, has gone to be with the Lord. We did a great, awesome concert at the Bridge with Petra. And I sat in with Petra, but that wasn't what made the night. Ken Hoover made the night. We wheeled him out in a wheelchair, and Kim had him in us. And hugged him, and Petra, those guys loved on him. John Mark was there. And, there's a lot of people like Phil Keggy, Kerry Livgren of Kansas, Jeff Cook of Alabama. A lot of people would have liked to be there, or at his funeral. But when we live streamed his funeral, boy, a lot of people got to hear some good news in the midst of struggling with saying goodbye with Ken. But let me share a passage, and this is for you, because I want to kind of tie some of these things together. In what is the first part of the Bible, there's this guy called Isaiah, right? And he was a prophet. Saw things way in advance. So this is like 1000 BC. He is describing this. And basically, he's saying, look, through this prophet, Isaiah, in 55, verse 8 or so, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, said the Lord. For as high as the heavens are above the earth, now stop there, think about that. Look at the earth, look at the heavens. That's quite the distance. That's the difference between the way we think and the way God thinks. And if you're sitting there going, well, that's before we're born again, no, it's also after. If you've been born again. And if you think you deserve to be born again, then maybe you're not. I don't know. Pulling no punches. So he continues, though, and he says, for as the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return there without having watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to sow and bread to eat. See, that's 3,000 years ago. It was an agricultural crowd. Isaiah speaking. God is speaking through Isaiah to an agricultural crowd. So my word will that goes forth from my mouth, it's God talking. So my word that goes forth from my mouth, it will not return to me in vain or void in one version. It will accomplish what I intended and will succeed in what I sent it for. Now, I had a pretty troubled childhood, and I had a lot of trauma. I mean, a boatload of trauma. And I'm getting ready to talk about the first meeting with Bon Jovi, which did not go the way you probably think it went. But a lot of trauma as a kid, man. When I was 12, in my 12th year, I got jumped by 5 guys and just beat to a pulp for trying to help somebody. I had, no, I'm not going to go into details of it, but I got a big gash on the top of my head. It's 4 hairline fractures, 39 stitches, 25 inside, 14 out, I think. Anyway, found my best friend's cousin, who was 5 years old, found him when he had drowned. And, you know, that's not even the worst of the stuff. Anyway, so I went to Team Challenge, both in North Carolina, 6 months up in Pennsylvania, Raresburg, for you Pennsylvanians. And that was the program started by David Wilkerson, Crossing the Switchblade. You can check that movie out, from the gangs in New York. There's a lot of New York guys in there. And shout out to the homies. And it helped a lot. It helped a lot. I came back here and studied music at UNCG. Studied over at A&T for a semester, and that was very different. You know, it was classical at UNCG. Over at A&T, it was very much a jazz thing. And so then I was offered for a band. Came back to UNCG. Band made an offer. Ran off with the band. I thought maybe if I hung out with them, they would become Christians. I became a self-serving Christian, let's say. Backslidden, we could say. And so I have a mutual friend that introduces me to John Bon Jovi, who's a nice guy, smart guy, good businessman, and the first meeting was at Greensboro Coliseum, which is my home turf. You know, it's I was born here, and so we're talking about music, and it's going really, really well, except I'm not paying attention to where we are. Now, at this point, I was playing big clubs and stuff around here, but not the arenas. And so we're walking, we're talking, and great conversation and talking about the future. He's very interested in what I'm doing. And then all of a sudden we hear, and this is about 5 o'clock, say, after time change, all of a sudden there's like 2,000 people waiting to get into the show that night. This is back in 86. That would have been Bon Jovi opening for 38 Special, believe it or not. This is before 7,800 Fahrenheit hit hard. So they're opening for 38 Special. We're talking, but I mean, already you can see John's going to be headlining. and not going to be opening for 38 Special much longer. So we're out there talking, and all of a sudden, I hear somebody shout, "There they are!" And I looked up to see who they were talking about. Imagine 2,000 people. I mean, they were waiting to get in the concert. And they saw John. Assumed I was in the band already, I guess. And they came running towards us. Not some of them, not a few of them. And I guarantee there's some people out there listening that were in that crowd. But before you say you were or not, John and I ran back to the backstage door, and it was locked. I'm like, this was going well. It's not going well now. And then we go to the tour bus, which is their tour bus is parked right there. We try to get in, it's locked. Now I'm not thinking this interview or whatever, or our chat is not going well. I'm concerned for our safety, and I honestly was probably more concerned with his. And I said, let's dive under the bus. So we dove under the tour bus just as everybody got to us. And so the tour bus was surrounded. And by about 2,000 people, and a sea of arms came in. And I never talked to John about this. But it was not a good feeling seeing those sea of arms coming for us. They pulled hair, pulled clothes. They got a necklace off of John. He had a necklace that his mom gave him that he never took off, and that he was upset. Not with me, but just that he lost the necklace. And then later on, so security comes out, gets us out under the bus. They open up for 38 Special. Smoke. I mean, they're just in their prime at that point. And so then I'm talking to him. 38 Special's playing, and we're walking around backstage. And I was not watching the distance between, there was a backstage opening, same night, and somebody grabbed my hair and pulled me over, and then again, kind of the sea of arms thing. And I look over, John's like 5 feet away, laughing so hard. And I'm like, yeah, this is not too funny at this point. It's me, not you. And I didn't feel the love at that point, I gotta tell you. And but his security team got me out real quick. They were great at what they did, and doing chops, and that was fine, wasn't hurt. Somebody got some of my hair, but so now John and I, John, we had many meetings about my career, songwriter, and in this band, talking about where he was, what things were going on with him. And then I went, and Nantucket was looking for a guitar player, and they asked me to audition. And so I did. They offered the gig, but there was just a lot going on. Perry, what made it appealing was Perry Richardson, the bass player I mentioned. I was going to join Max Warrior, and Perry was playing with Carl, and they made me an invitation and said, "Hey, you ready to be a warrior?" I said, "Yeah." And so, but then I saw Perry at the Nantucket audition, and I was kind of confused about that. I never asked him what was going on. Him and Carl may have had. I don't know. You can't assume that people who are friends in one band and then they do different things. That doesn't make them enemies, but sadly sometimes they are. So then I talked to Carl, and I said, "Look, I'm kind of fed up with this East Coast scene." And because I'd had several disappointments even in chatting with John, not him, our management, which was through Nantucket, same management. And I moved to Nashville. But before I moved to Nashville, I called my friend Carl, and I said, "Hey, Carl, look, John has been interested in the groups I'm working with here. I'm moving to Nashville. I'm going to do session work, songwriting stuff, and not going to tour for a while. And so, look, I'm going to give you his number and call him. He's interested in signing new bands." And Carl, who was from Max Warrior, said, "Oh, sure, great." And he even asked, he said, "Why are you giving me this number?" I said, "Because, I'm moving to Nashville. I can't use it. And, you probably can. I appreciate what you do. Good voice and nice guy." And he goes, "Well, I really appreciate it." I said, "Hope it goes well." I never spoke to Carl again. So imagine my surprise years later. My Nora's, cousin was having a wedding, and I offered to work the sound system that had the stuff, and somebody singing "Once in a Lifetime" or "One in a Million" or something, and I'm going, man, I know that voice. And so I pick up the album, it says Firehouse, and I flip it over. There's Carl and Perry. And the other guys, but I knew Carl and Perry a little better. And I'm going, wow. But he's not Carl then, he's CJ Snare. And the one thing I do regret is that Carl passed away this year from cancer. And I just wish I could have known beforehand, and just made sure he was good with things. And but so now anyway, I go to Nashville. My career is going great. In Nashville, I worked with Steve Earle, Steve Winwood, Jimmy Buffett, Dave Mason, a bunch of people. So, and was actually at Woodwinds when Steve Winwood and Dave Mason pulled up when they were in traffic and had been apart for years, had a big fight publicly. And I was standing there when they both came together and shook hands and hugged each other. Their limos came in. It was really, that was musical history, man. So, I go out with a Geffen band to just tighten up. My whole world starts to fall apart. And then my wife calls we were in Puerto Rico recording and playing, and she said, "Your grandmother just died." And I was like, man. So I flew home the next day. And to keep the long story shorter, I ended up starting a church in our house. I started a Bible study in our house just because I wanted people to get to learn about the Bible without all the religious circus and hoopla, if you will. And to a large degree, we were able to do that. I led that organization, that fellowship, for 22 years. It blew up into a huge church. And yet, there were things that weren't getting communicated. And as I tried to step down and away and hand it off, God said, absolutely not. And so I'm no longer leading the church weekly. I'm really wanting to help other people that are doing it, pastors, but also helping musicians. And because it's tough out there on the road, and stuff happens, like getting a call, somebody saying, hey, your grandmother just died, and you got nobody to turn to, nobody to call. So we're working on a way that we could get a hotline out there for musicians to call. And when they need somebody to pray with them. And they need somebody that's not going to, be bowled over by who they are, but be more concerned with what they need. And, but here's the thing. I said, what does it have to do with the pastor, and what does it have to do with you? So you're thinking, what's your part in this story? I'll tell you what it is. If you think, if I could go back, I would have changed anything about what I just told you, you'd be wrong. And here's why. Because God had to put a ceiling on me in the music world, I think probably just to keep me alive, till I could begin to preach and share with people. And so we've done that. And God, man, has blessed immensely. But here's the thing. Who would have thought God would have used a deaf mute to do all that? What? Deaf mute? Did I miss something? I was born a deaf mute. I couldn't hear. I couldn't talk. My surgeries over 30 began when I was 18 months old. And 2.5 was when they discovered I was deaf, had more surgery, literally cutting the eardrums with a scalpel, and have a lot of scar tissue in my eardrums. And then at 5 years old, I was muttering, couldn't speak, went through speech therapy for 4 years. And, that same guy, Isaiah, I was talking about earlier, he's got another thing he said in a earlier part, that he says, see if I can find it here. Yeah, Isaiah 35 says, say to those with anxious heart, be strong, have no fear. Be strong, have no fear. Remember that. Behold your God. Vengeance is coming. God's recompense, it is coming. Then that's an exclamation point. And I don't think I need to tell you about all the stuff going on in Israel, that we're trying to do some stuff and have a neat way of helping. We'll talk about that in just a sec. Behold your God, vengeance is coming. God's recompense is coming. Then he will save you. Then the eyes of the blind will be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame will leap like a deer, and the tongue of the mute shall sing. Now, I like that version. Another version says, the tongue of the dumb will sing. I prefer mute for obvious reasons. I don't say I was born deaf and dumb. I say I was born deaf and mute and deaf. So, God put me in the music world, and had I followed what I wanted, I would have followed that path. God changed my path. And I ended up in the Midwest doing worship for a pastor. And I love this pastor. I read his books, listened to his teachings. I really didn't know who he was musically. He's out in California. So I share, and he says, he really would love to have you out at Costa Mesa, California. If you're ever out there or near there, love to have you. And it's like, oh, well, Pastor Chuck, that sounds great. We'll come out there and play music for you. Love to. I get out there on a Sunday night, and I said, do y'all have music out here regularly? Very often on Sunday night? And they said, we have for years. And he kind of looked at me like, are you all with us? You know? and I said, oh. I said, well, who did you have last week? And he said, well, last week we had Rick Wakeman. Had played with Yes, and he's a Christian, and came in, did a really, really good job. Rick Wakeman played with Yes and was one of the best rock keyboardists of all time. And he had shared at Costa Mesa the week before. What I didn't know, what God had done, is placed me right in the home church of the man who started Maranatha Music, Pastor Chuck Smith. You might know him better from the Jesus Revolution movie that Kelsey Grammer, who was Frasier for so many years on television, plays the part of my pastor, Pastor Chuck Smith. I had two awesome pastors. One was Pastor Chuck Smith, another local guy, Pastor Pete Beck. And I ended up, Ken Hoover of Zion Music actually got saved in Pastor Chuck's tent at Costa Mesa. He ends up running Zion Guitars and has a big part in my faith and, coming back to the Lord. And I'm excited because I'm talking to John Mark Hampton of Mariah Guitars about building Harp of David, David's harp. We're not sure. That's David in the Bible. And we're going to do two. One is for me, but another was going to be given away, we believe, in Israel. And we can have a guitar contest in Israel. And whether you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, you could win this guitar contest and get the Harp of David. And now, to get the Harp of David, you might have to hear David harp, this David. But I'm really excited about working with John Mark, and we're talking about doing perhaps some Shabbat worship stuff. So pretty stoked about that. So that's what the pastor in North Carolina has to do with Bon Jovi, Firehouse, and Nantucket. And what it has to do with you is that little kid, that deaf mute, traumatized deaf mute, God took me out. He didn't, I went through a lot more trauma as a pastor, leading others through trauma, but I mean, jumping in with them with no boundaries and giving compassion and empathy with, yeah, I mean, just triple drownings and child being killed by a dog and boating accidents and just, but those were God entrusting me with those special circumstances. And God's also entrusted us with a kind of special circumstance within our family. Not going into details, but, you know, I thought life would lead me one way. It didn't. But that doesn't mean it was worse. It was better. So things may not have worked out the way you had planned, but you know what? It can be better. It can be better. So from this deaf mute to you, remember that simple truth, that God has a plan. And how much must he care about and love you to do all that with a deaf mute so I could be sharing with you right now. I don't know what you got going on. You can call our ministry, email, text, whatever. I'll be praying. If you're a pastor or a musician, please reach out if you need help, if you need a hand, anything. And we're setting up a thing to help pastors with their cafes. We're probably going to pick, well, the first is a series of 4, and we're going to pick out a group of 50 to help them with their cafes. So if you're a pastor and you don't have a cafe, or you have one and you want to streamline it, holler at us. And I'm living to tell what he died to say. So, until the whole world hears, remember, you are loved. If you need anything, that's our website, youareloved.org. Spelled out, youareloved.org. God bless you. Thanks for listening. And again, if we can help you, let us know.